If you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, the most common question you're probably asking is, what should I eat? And the most common answer you're probably getting is cut carbs. They raise your blood sugar. So you cut carbs, your blood sugar comes down. Problem solved, right? Not quite. In this video, I'm explaining why cutting carbs treats the symptom but doesn't fix the problem, and why that matters for long-term metabolic health and type 2 diabetes. I'm Debbie Marini, former endocrinology nurse practitioner, and if you've been restricting carbs and wondering if you'll have to do this forever, this is for you. Let's start with what you're typically told when you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. Your doctor says you need to watch your carbs. Your dietitian gives you a meal plan, low carb, portion controls, focused on preventing blood sugar spikes. You download apps to track every gram of carbohydrate. You start avoiding bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, fruit, and it works, at least initially. Your blood sugar readings improve, your A1C comes down, and you feel like you're managing it. But here's the question almost nobody asks. Why did carbs become a problem in the first place? Because for most of human history, people ate carbohydrates, whole grains, tubers, fruits, and they didn't develop diabetes. So what changed? What broke in your metabolism that made carbohydrates suddenly problematic? And more importantly, can that be fixed? Let me give you an analogy that explains this perfectly. Imagine your sink has a clogged drain. Water backs up, it pools in the sink, and if you keep running the water, it overflows onto the counter. So what do? Option 1, you stop using the water. No more running the faucet. No more washing dishes. You avoid using the sink entirely. And yes, this prevents the overflow. The counter stays dry. Problem managed. But you haven't actually fixed anything. The drain is still clogged, and the moment you try to use water again, the problem returns. So you're stuck, permanently restricted from using your sink the way it was designed to work. Option 2, you clear the clog. You address what's blocking the drain, you remove the obstruction, you restore the function. And once the drain is clear, water flows through just fine. You can use the sink normally again, the way it was meant to work. This is exactly what's happening with carbohydrates in type 2 diabetes. Your metabolism is the drain, carbohydrates are the water. When your metabolism is functioning properly, it handles carbohydrates just fine. Glucose is absorbed, insulin signals your cells to take it in, and blood sugar stays regulated. But when something clogs the system, when insulin signaling becomes blocked, carbohydrates back up, blood sugar rises. Cutting carbs is like not using the water. It prevents the overflow. It manages the symptom, but it doesn't clear the clog. And as long as the clog remains, you're stuck restricting carbs forever, never able to eat normally again. So what's the clog in type 2 diabetes? It's not the carbohydrates themselves. Carbs aren't inherently toxic or problematic. The clog is insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is driven by chronic inflammation. Here's what it looks like. Step 1, gut inflammation develops. From years of processed foods, stress, medications, blood sugar swings, or environmental toxins, your gut lining becomes damaged. The microbiome becomes imbalanced. Step 2, inflammatory signals leak into your bloodstream. When the gut lining is compromised, inflammatory particles cross the gut barrier and enter the circulation. Your immune system responds. Chronic systemic inflammation develops. Step 3, inflammation blocks insulin signaling. Inflammation directly interferes with insulin receptors on your cells. Insulin is trying to deliver glucose into the cells, but there are inflammatory signals that are blocking the message. That's insulin resistance. Step 4, glucose backs up in your bloodstream. Because cells aren't responding to insulin properly, glucose can't get in. It stays in your blood and the blood sugar rises. This is the clog. And when you cut carbs, you're reducing the amount of glucose entering the system, which prevents the overflow, but you're not addressing the inflammation blocking insulin signaling. You're not healing the gut. You're not clearing the clog. So the restriction has to continue indefinitely. Now here's where this gets even more important. When you restrict carbs long-term without addressing the underlying inflammation, you actually create new problems. This is what I call the metabolic inflammation loop. Here's how it perpetuates. You restrict carbs to manage blood sugar. Your glucose readings improve, your A1C comes down, and it looks like it's working. But your gut bacteria need fiber from whole food carbohydrates. When you eliminate carbs, you're also eliminating the prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Those bacteria starve. Gut dysbiosis worsens. Gut dysfunction increases inflammation. As beneficial bacteria die off and opportunistic bacteria take over, gut-derived inflammation actually increases. The clog gets worse, not better. Metabolic flexibility is lost. Your body becomes dependent on burning fat for fuel. It loses the ability to efficiently process glucose. You develop what's called metabolic rigidity. Reintroducing carbs becomes nearly impossible because your metabolism has adapted to restriction, so even small amounts of carbohydrates now spike your blood sugar dramatically. You're stuck, which is why so many people say keto worked great at first, but now if I even eat a sweet potato, my blood sugar goes crazy. That's not proof that carbs are the problem. It's proof that restriction created metabolic rigidity without ever fixing the clog. So what does it look like to actually clear the clog? It means addressing the root cause, the inflammation and gut dysfunction increasing insulin resistance. Phase 1 would be to reduce inflammation and heal the gut. It's not about permanent carb restriction. It's about removing inflammatory triggers like processed foods, excess sugar, seed oils, supporting gut lining integrity, and restoring beneficial bacteria with prebiotic fiber from whole foods. Reducing systemic inflammation through nutrition, sleep, stress management, and movement. Phase 2, you restore insulin sensitivity. As gut health improves and inflammation decreases, gut signaling starts working again. Cells become more responsive to insulin. Glucose can move into the cells efficiently again. And phase 3 is to rebuild metabolic flexibility. As insulin sensitivity returns, you systematically reintroduce whole food carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, berries, whole grains, legumes. Your body relearns how to handle them, and here's what happens. When the clog clears, your blood sugar stabilizes, not because you're restricting carbs, but because your metabolism is functioning properly again. You can eat real whole food, including carbohydrates, without blood sugar chaos. You're no longer dependent on restriction. You've restored function. I've worked with clients who went from strict keto, like terrified to eat fruit, to eating sweet potatoes, berries, and even sourdough bread with better A1C results than they had on keto. Not because they cheated, but because they cleared the clog. Here's what matters most. Cutting carbs is a symptom management strategy. It can be helpful in the short term, but it's not a long-term solution. Clearing the clog, addressing inflammation, and restoring gut health is a root cause solution. It restores metabolic function so you can eat normally again. The goal isn't about restriction forever. The goal is healing. And when you heal the system, food stops being something to fear and starts being what it always was meant to be, nourishment. If you've been cutting carbs to manage your blood sugar and wondering if you'll have to do this forever, you don't. Carbs aren't the problem. The clog is the problem. And when you address the inflammation and gut dysfunction driving insulin resistance, your metabolism can handle carbohydrates again the way it was designed to. If you'd like to understand how to clear the clog, the exact 3-phase process for healing the gut, reducing inflammation, and restoring insulin sensitivity, I've put together a free training that walks through the entire framework. It's about 20 minutes, and it explains the metabolic inflammation loop and how to break it. You can watch it at the link below or in the description. Thanks for watching. And if this shifted how you think about carbs and diabetes, please subscribe. I release new videos every week on reversing insulin resistance and restoring metabolic health. I'll see you in the next one.